There is a white crystal that every 19th century kitchen kept in a small tin next to the flour. There is a white crystal that turned soft cucumbers into pickles, so firm they cracked like fresh apples. There is a white crystal that appeared in every American cookbook from 1830 to 1950, and there is a white crystal that the FDA effectively drove off the shelves of every grocery store in the country by the 1970s. It's called alum. And its 140-year reign as the pickle industry's crispness secret ended, not because it stopped working, but because a factory in New Jersey figured out how to sell you a replacement for 12 times the price. By the end, you'll know why. Let's dive in. Right now, the average American home canner spends between $80 and $200 a summer on canning supplies. That is jars, lids, rings, water bath equipment, and the specialty additives every modern canning book insists you need. And if you have looked at the price of commercial pickle firming agents recently, you already know the situation is absurd. A 5.5-ounce plastic jar of Ball brand Pickle Crisp, the calcium chloride product that replaced traditional pickle firmers in the American market, sells for between $6 and $9. That translates to roughly $18 per pound. Meanwhile, the exact ingredient that 19th century American home canners used, and which appeared in nearly every canning manual published before 1970, cost about 40 cents a pound in 1935, and can still be sourced online today for under $1 per pound in bulk. The engineered products every big box store pushes as modern canning essentials, calcium chloride, granules, ascorbic acid crystals, and proprietary firming agents, cost between 10 and 25 times more than the traditional ingredients they replaced. And here's the part nobody puts in the marketing brochure. Modern commercial pickles, the ones sitting in the refrigerated deli case at your grocery store, turn soft and mushy within 3 to 6 weeks of opening. Homemade pickles preserved by 19th century methods stayed crisp in a sealed crock for over a year. When your Pickle Crisp bottle runs out, you buy a new one at full retail. That is not preservation. That is a subscription plan poured out of a plastic jar. And the modern American canning industry itself is not exactly transparent about its history. The two largest home canning brands in the United States, Ball and Kerr, have quietly rewritten their published recipes over the last 50 years to remove ingredients that were considered standard practice for over a century. Alum, pickling lime, grape leaves, oak leaves, horseradish leaves. Every one of these traditional pickle firmers has been either removed, discouraged, or replaced by a proprietary product manufactured by the same corporation that prints the recipe book. You are paying more than ever for canning materials that produce softer results than your great-grandmother achieved with ingredients she picked from her own garden. And when you see what it costs to source and apply a proper 19th century pickle firmer, you will understand why no major grocery chain has ever stocked one. The fermentation crocks of every 19th century kitchen have been producing crisp pickles since before your grandmother was born. These methods do not degrade in storage. They do not require refrigeration to prevent spoilage. And they do not care whether canning season falls in a wet August or a dry September. But the real question is not whether traditional pickle firming works. The food science on that was settled over 150 years ago. The real question is, what happens when you use the same white crystal or the same handful of leaves that every farmhouse kitchen relied on before the modern chemical industry took over the pickle aisle? And that is where these methods stop being nostalgic curiosities and start being a threat to a multi-billion-dollar canning market. But to see why, you need to understand the chemistry. Because once you see how simple the mechanism actually is, you will never look at a jar of Pickle Crisp the same way again. Alum is a name that refers to a family of double sulfate salts. The specific form used in traditional American pickling was potassium aluminum sulfate, a colorless crystalline compound that dissolves readily in water. That name sounds like a modern industrial chemical, but the substance itself has been documented in human use for over 4,000 years. Egyptian records from 1500 BCE describe alum use in dyeing textiles. Roman writers documented alum use in preserving vegetables. Medieval European monasteries maintained alum stockpiles for pickling, tanning, and medicinal preparations. In the 1800s, American general stores sold alum in small paper packets next to the salt and the baking soda. Every farmhouse kitchen kept a tin of it on the shelf. Here's what happens when alum enters a pickle brine. The compound dissolves and releases aluminum and potassium ions. Those aluminum ions cross-link with the pectin molecules in the cell walls of cucumber, cabbage, and other fermenting vegetables. Pectin is the natural polysaccharide that gives vegetable tissue its structural firmness. When it breaks down through natural enzymatic action, vegetables soften. When aluminum ions bond with pectin molecules, the cross-linked structure resists that enzymatic breakdown for months or even years. The result is a pickle that stays snap-crisp long after commercial pickles would have turned to mush. A single teaspoon of alum added to a gallon of pickle brine, along with the standard vinegar, salt, and spices, produces detectable firmness improvement within the first 24 hours of curing. That is not enough to make a soft cucumber crisp on its own. But here is where the practical science starts. When you combine alum with fresh unwaxed cucumbers picked at peak ripeness, an ice water pre-soak, and traditional lacto-fermentation conditions, you produce pickles with cellular firmness that laboratory testing has consistently rated superior to commercial products. That is enough to fill your pantry with a year's supply of ferments for pennies per jar. That is enough to eliminate every $8 bottle of pickle crisp from your shopping list. And none of it requires a proprietary product from a corporate canning brand. That fact alone tells you why you have never been told about it in a modern kitchen aisle. And unlike modern refrigerated deli pickles, traditional alum-firmed ferments store at room temperature in sealed crocks for months in a properly cured batch. That means your pantry becomes a permanent food storage system that runs without electricity, refrigeration, or expiration dates. Now, there is a second reason this ingredient was quietly buried, and most people have never heard the full story. During the American colonial period, alum was one of the most common household chemicals in North America. It was used in tanning leather, mordanting dyes, treating drinking water, and firming pickles. Colonial cookbooks, including Amelia Simmons's American Cookery, published in Hartford, Connecticut, in 1796, the first cookbook, written by an American, listed alum as a standard pickle ingredient. Throughout the 1800s, alum-firmed pickles were considered the American gold standard for canning. Fannie Farmer's landmark Boston Cooking School Cookbook, first published in 1896, included specific alum measurements in multiple pickle recipes. The 1937 edition of Joy of Cooking, one of the most widely sold American cookbooks of the 20th century, still listed alum as a routine pickle firmer. That is not folklore. That is documented American culinary science preserved in library archives at Harvard, Yale, and the Library of Congress. But if you think American home canning invented pickle firming, you are off by several thousand years. The Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century CE, documented Roman use of what he called alumen in the preservation of vegetables. His descriptions in Book 35 of the Naturalis Historia match modern chemical analyses of natural alum deposits from the Roman period. In medieval Europe, alum was one of the most valuable commodities of the Mediterranean trade routes. The Papal alum mines at Tolfa, discovered in 1462 near Rome, produced material that was shipped across the Christian world for use in textiles, medicine, and food preservation. Every literate European kitchen culture had a specific word for alum and specific instructions for its use in pickling. Chinese fermentation manuals from the Song dynasty, dating to the 11th century, describe similar aluminum-bearing mineral additives for vegetable preservation. By the 1800s, nearly every major food-preserving culture on the planet was using some form of aluminum-based mineral for firming fermented vegetables. British estates used it, German farmhouses used it, Polish and Ukrainian sauerkraut producers used it, American frontier settlers carried it in their supply wagons. The kitchens of the temperate world were already stocked with the same white crystal. It just never got the credit in a modern American grocery store. But the Romans and Chinese were not even close to the first civilizations to firm ferments with mineral additives. Archaeological evidence from Neolithic sites across the Fertile Crescent suggests that mineral-rich clay and vaporite deposits were being deliberately added to fermented food storage vessels as early as 6000 BC. Ancient Mesopotamian records mention specific mineral additives in beer and pickled vegetable preparation. This is not fringe archaeology. It is one of the oldest documented cases of food chemistry in human history. You can replicate the same 19th century pickle firmness in your own kitchen using ingredients available today. And yet almost none of this appears in any modern American canning conversation. Now, fast forward to the moment when alum was quietly written out of the American home kitchen. In the 1960s and 1970s, food safety research began raising questions about dietary aluminum exposure. The scientific concerns were real, though the doses relevant to home canning have never been definitively linked to human harm at the amounts used in traditional recipes. But the regulatory environment shifted. The FDA did not formally ban alum for home canning. Instead, extension services, university food safety programs, and the two largest home canning corporations quietly stopped recommending it in published recipes. Ball Corporation removed alum from its official canning guide by the mid-1970s. Kerr followed within a few years. Public health messaging framed alum as outdated and potentially harmful, even though the specific quantities in home canning had never been shown to cause harm in normal use. Now, here is what happened next. In 2003, Ball Corporation introduced a new proprietary product called Pickle Crisp Granules. The active ingredient is calcium chloride, a compound that produces a similar pectin cross-linking effect to alum without the aluminum content. Calcium chloride is manufactured industrially, packaged in small plastic jars, and priced at approximately $18 per pound. Compare that to bulk alum's traditional price of roughly $1 to $2 per pound. Traditional pickling lime, another 19th century firmer that Ball Corporation once sold under its own brand, was quietly discontinued around the same time. Ball no longer sells lime. Ball sells Pickle Crisp. The economics tell you everything about the transition. A cheap generic ingredient was replaced by a branded proprietary product at more than 10 times the price. If you were thinking this transition happened openly with a clear public explanation, you would be exactly wrong. It happened through recipe revisions, marketing campaigns, and quiet product replacement over a period of about 15 years. By the mid-1990s, a generation of American home canners had grown up without ever seeing alum on a store shelf. By the 2010s, most home canners could not tell you what alum was. The transition was so smooth that many food writers today describe traditional pickle firmers as unsafe or obsolete, without ever examining the actual research that justified the regulatory shift. Modern testing has confirmed what 19th century home canners already knew about traditional pickle firming methods. The USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning still acknowledges that pickle firming agents, including calcium salts, natural tannins from grape and oak leaves, and traditional lime treatments, produce measurable improvements in pickle firmness. University extension programs at Iowa State, Penn State, and the University of Georgia published detailed research on tannin-based and calcium-based firmers. As effective alternatives, the data is public. It is peer-reviewed. It sits behind extension service websites that most American home canners never think to search. Separately, the National Center for Home Food Preservation, hosted at the University of Georgia, maintains detailed technical bulletins on traditional pickle firming methods that any home canner can download for free. And in Europe, food fermentation researchers have continued to document alum's superior performance in commercial pickle production for markets outside the American regulatory system. Every one of these examples is documented, published, and verifiable. And yet the total shelf space devoted to traditional 19th century pickle firmers at any major American grocery chain remains effectively zero. So if these methods predate modern canning by thousands of years and were confirmed as effective by every major American cookbook until 1970, why isn't there a single tin of alum or bag of grape leaves in the canning aisle? Because the system was never designed to accommodate something you can order in bulk online for $1 a pound. The modern American home canning market runs on branded products with recognizable trademarks, standardized formulations, licensed distribution channels, and proprietary marketing programs. Traditional pickle firmers are not on that list. Not because they fail, because no major canning corporation can differentiate a generic mineral compound from a competitor's generic mineral compound. There is no marketing budget in commodity chemistry. There is no premium price point in a substance that has existed in every American general store for 2 centuries. There is no way to build a proprietary product moat around an ingredient that any Roman farmer knew how to use. Without brand differentiation, there is no advertising budget. Without advertising budget, there is no shelf placement. Without shelf placement, there is no consumer awareness. This is not a ban in the criminal sense. It is something more effective than a ban. It is structural invisibility. The American home canning and food preservation market generates over $2 billion a year in retail revenue. That revenue depends on branded jars, branded lids, branded rings, branded firming agents, and the seasonal repeat purchase cycle that comes when small proprietary containers run out. Every dollar that flows through that system passes through equipment and formulations that someone owns, maintains, and invoices for. A bulk bag of alum generates no royalty. A handful of grape leaves picked from your fence line requires no proprietary packaging. A jar of pickling lime purchased in agricultural quantities supports no licensed distribution channel. These traditional firmers create no recurring revenue stream for any party at any point in the supply chain. From the perspective of the modern canning economy, they are not competitors. They are non-entities. They do not fit into the financial architecture, and therefore they do not exist within the regulatory architecture. No one conspired to suppress them. The frameworks that govern American home canning were simply written for products that scale, products that can be trademarked, packaged in proprietary containers, protected under retail distribution contracts, and financed through approved wholesale channels. A white crystal you can order from a bulk chemical supplier for $1 a pound does not clear a single one of those gates, and so it vanishes. Not suppressed, just never seen. Now, if you are thinking these methods might be too crude to matter in your life, stop and consider what you actually need to produce a jar of crisp home pickles. You need firm, fresh cucumbers. You need a clean fermentation vessel. You need salt, vinegar, and spices. You need a firming ingredient that stops enzymatic softening. You need a technique that has been tested over generations. Every one of those requirements is met by a traditional 19th century canning approach. None of them require a $9 jar of proprietary calcium chloride. All of them can be served by a combination of ingredients that costs less than a dinner for two. If you want to start producing 19th century quality home pickles today, we put together a full manual that covers everything in this video and more. The link is in the description below. Here is how the sourcing works. You have 3 practical options. First, natural plant tannins. Fresh grape leaves, oak leaves, or horseradish leaves contain natural tannins that inhibit the pectin softening enzyme in fermenting vegetables. Add 3 to 5 clean leaves per quart jar of pickles. Cost $0 if you have wild grapevines, oak trees, or horseradish plants within reach. This method is universally recognized as safe and is currently recommended by extension services across the United States. Second, calcium chloride from bulk sources. If you want the same effect as commercial pickle crisp without the $18 per pound price, food-grade calcium chloride is available from home brewing suppliers, cheese-making suppliers, and general chemical retailers at approximately $8 to $12 per pound in bulk quantities. That is half the retail price of proprietary pickle crisp for identical chemistry. Third, traditional alum in modest quantities for those researching historical methods. Food-grade alum is sold as a spice at most well-stocked grocery stores in the pickling section and online for approximately $1 to $3 per ounce. Use only quantities specified in reputable historical cookbooks. Modern nutritional research on dietary aluminum has raised questions that individual home canners should consider based on their own health circumstances. Total cost for a full canning season using traditional 19th century methods comes in under $10 in materials at current U.S. retail prices. Compare that to $50 to $80 for a season of proprietary firming agents from name-brand canning suppliers. That is not a discount. That is a different economic universe. One critical warning. Modern nutritional research has raised legitimate questions about long-term dietary aluminum exposure at high cumulative doses. The specific quantities used in traditional home canning have never been definitively linked to human harm. But individual sensitivity varies, and pregnant women, young children, and those with kidney disease should consult a healthcare provider before choosing an aluminum-based firmer. Fortunately, natural grape and oak leaf tannins provide an effective, universally accepted alternative that avoids the issue entirely. For most home canners, the traditional leaf method delivers 19th century pickle firmness without any regulatory or health concern whatsoever. There are real limits, and you should know them. Traditional pickle firming methods are not magic. They cannot rescue soft or overripe cucumbers. Fresh, firm, unwaxed cucumbers picked within 24 hours of processing are essential. Firming agents work with proper technique, not in place of it. Follow published rates from reputable extension service publications. Do not exceed traditional quantities. The 19th century pickle firming method is a 200-year-old answer to a question the modern American canning industry was never designed to ask. It does not replace all aspects of proper home canning technique or compete with commercial pickle brands for shelf presence. But for the cost of a handful of leaves or an ounce of traditional mineral, it gives you a fermented pickle with the exact snap and crispness that your great-grandmother produced, using the same chemistry that Roman farmers, medieval European monasteries, and colonial American cooks relied on for centuries. A lot of what this channel covers was nearly lost, not because it stopped working, but because the system was never designed to accommodate something that does not generate a monthly invoice. If discovering the lost science of self-sufficient food preservation matters to you, subscribing and sharing is the simplest way to make sure this kind of knowledge keeps being found. If you had 5 fresh grape leaves and a jar of homegrown cucumbers, would you produce a year's worth of crisp, fermented pickles for pennies? Or would you still reach for the $9 plastic jar of proprietary crisp granules at the grocery store? I would genuinely like to know. Drop it in the comments.